The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk. Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Success in Practice podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jade Scott. With over 2 decades of experience in private practice, business strategy, keynote speaking, and clinic ownership, Jade brings a unique blend of clinical expertise and strategic know-how to our industry. She has furthered her education through prestigious leadership programs at Harvard Business School and clinical leadership excellence at Melbourne University. She has a stated aim to cultivate a new generation of great leaders who will lift the bar in healthcare and beyond, driving positive change and creating thriving workplace cultures. She is currently the developer and project manager of a state-of-the-art allied health hub in Melton, Victoria, an ambitious project utilising a 3-storey facility in one of Australia's biggest growth corridors. It's her desire that this will be one of the largest in Australia, housing a comprehensive range of allied health and complementary services. In addition to this, she's a wife and a mother, and hopefully today she'll shed some light on how she's been able to juggle these achievements with her family life. Jade, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We've been trying to hook this up for a little while now, and through some surgery and some of your big projects, we've been able to find some time. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Sammy. Thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone who is listening.
Yeah, so I'm hoping tonight that we can. I know, we're very aware and actually quite proud of some of the things that you're doing out there in the leadership space. So we'll talk about that. But before we talk about that, what people really want to know, I think, is more about you, Jade. I want to know a bit about your backstory, about you growing up, maybe some of the high school years, and what got you into osteopathy. And then tell us about your evolution more into business and cultivating leadership. So yeah, let's get to know Jade Scott.
Oh, the backstory. Let's open the can of worms. It's interesting that you start off with that question. My husband, literally about an hour ago, as we were getting the kids ready for bed tonight, I've got a few ventures going on behind the scenes that people will find out about soon enough. And he just said to me, I think you need professional help. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, you're just addicted to achieving. And he said, and even when you get there, you don't sit and sort of smell the roses. You're already on to the next thing. And I probably took a minute there to, I think reflect, and I do. I think it's not that I have shiny ball syndrome. I don't sleep well next to opportunity. And that's been, for me, for a really long age, a really long time from a really young age. And I think I've just, as far as I can go back, Sammy, I've had a business. I started my first business when I was 6 years old, when I got a whole lot of tadpoles from the local pond, and I paid my brother $1 a tadpole to turn them into frogs, and we sold them at school for $2 each.
He didn't kiss them, did he?
Full of bacon. And then all the frogs died. And then this will give you some more insight into me. My mum got another phone call from the school saying your daughter started another business. And, all these people want their money back for these frogs that have died. And my mum said, buyer beware. That's, my daughter's made the money. She made it fair and square, and they should have known better. So I grew up in a family that was a family business. And all I ever knew was my mum, my family, my uncles all going to work together, and it was in a funeral parlour. My grandfather said to me when, I was about 6 years old, before he started the funeral parlours. Before that, he was in developing and buying and selling a lot of property. And he said, there's nothing surer in life than death and taxes. And he said, and I hate taxes, so I'm going to go into death. And so he started this chain of funeral parlours. It was really successful. We only sold them as a family, but it was the family business I was meant to inherit and I was meant to take over. So I was constantly going to the funeral parlour, seeing my mum work, doing accounts, doing the cleaning, doing everything. And he sat me down. I remember I was about 14 years old, and he said, "You're going to take over this empire." And I said, "Pa, there's nothing surer in life than death and taxes, but there's also health. What if we keep people alive?" And he said, "You're mad." And so I think that was when I kind of thought, well, maybe I don't have to go into death. Maybe I can go into life. And I sort of started this bit of a trajectory around helping people. And I was always the young girl that would massage all my aunties and uncles at family events and family functions. And then, and I constantly refer back to my grandfather because he was very, very hard on me. I think almost a bit of that sort of Munchausen's where I just desperately sought his validation in everything that I did, and I never got it. I remember, even when he was dying, I was holding his hand. I just wanted him to tell me that he was proud of me, and it never ever came. So I was constantly trying to do things to get the attention of my grandfather, who we now have found out he had Asperger's. So he was very lacking in emotional connection, and so I think that's why I was desperately seeking that. But my mum, who I obviously adore, sort of was quite a hard woman when it came to business as well. And so I think as I got older, it was inevitable that I was going to have my own business. I didn't know what it was, and at that stage I didn't know it was going to be osteopathy. But my cousins were chiropractors. And I remember going to one of my cousins who was a very successful Gonstead practitioner. He had his own clinic, and I went and did work experience with him. And after, the first week working there, I remember saying to him, you crack all these joints and you work on the joints and, putting people back in place. I said, "What about the muscles?" And he said, "If you care about the muscles and the joints, you need to be an osteopath, not a chiropractor." And so I, started exploring what osteopathy was. And as soon as I looked into it more, I thought, yep, this is for me.
How old were you then, Jade?
I was about 16 then.
Right.
And that was when I saw my dad, who was in the most pain I've ever seen anyone in my life. He prolapsed his disc that ended up sequestrating and ended up lodging itself down in his sacrum. And I remember watching my dad keeled over a bed, just in crying in unrelenting pain. And after a few phone calls to the guys down at the golf club, they got him onto this guy in Ascot Vale, and I remember my dad getting dropped off and could hardly walk in there, and then he walked out and he'd seen an osteopath. And I said, it just sort of solidified what it was. I said, I want to change people's lives. I want to have people walk in and not be able to walk and walk out like magic. And obviously we now know that it's a little bit harder and a little bit more different to that, but that was my experience, and it changed my dad's life. And so, got stuck into uni, and that was sort of it.
Tell me about that part of your life, university. Where did you attend?
I was the youngest, so I was a very young. So I sort of started uni when I was 17, so I turned 18 sort of just after O week. So I was the youngest in the year level.
Which university was that?
Victoria University in Melbourne. Very, very small cohort. So there was only probably started off about 30 of us, and I think by the end there was even less because a few people failed and moved on and had career changes. I am a proud dyslexic, diagnosed as an adult. I could never spell. It always took me twice as long to do homework, 3 times as long to study. I have an amazing, almost Rain Man capability when it comes to photographic memory for colours, but also figures jump off the page at me when it comes to numbers. But spelling, ChatGPT is my best friend. I still don't know how. My spelling is so bad that even when I put it into Google, it doesn't even know how to autocorrect it and give me an option. So I sort of winged my way through life and just thought, well, if I'm a terrible speller, I had this grit and determination. I sort of call it grit, which is this relentless drive to achieve, but an equal determination not to fail. I walked that tightrope my whole life and just put in the work where I needed to, but couldn't spell, and so I just sort of thought, well, if I can't spell and I'm never going to be an academic, I've got to get by with my personality. And that's one of the things when it came to osteopathy. I used to say I was a very average osteopath with a wonderful personality to counteract it. And I think that was because I drew on potentially the emotional intelligence that maybe I didn't see growing up in business. So tried to leverage off the personal empathetic side. And we had a little bit of a chat about that, I guess, off camera, where I've worked really, really hard on understanding emotional intelligence and how to connect with people and build trust faster. And I feel like I've leveraged off that for the last few years.
We'll get into that, I guess, a little bit later in some more depth. Tell me more about university life and specifically osteopathy. What was it in those, like, I mean, everybody goes and starts a course, not really knowing. You might have an idea of what, I mean, you worked with your cousins, they were chiropractors, you kind of knew what a clinical life looked like. But, most people don't really know what they're getting themselves into until they get to that point where they're either in or they're out. And I guess, what was that point for you when you said, was there someone or something or a point in university life that really hooked you in terms of osteopathy? I'm not talking about wanting to own a clinic and run a business. It's more about actual treatment and understanding the concepts of osteopathy. When was it that you were really hooked? When did you kind of say, yeah, I'm really getting this and this is really for me?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things, and probably not the answer that you're expecting. And I don't talk about it often, but there was a couple of moments. One, I just knew I always wanted my own clinic from day one. My cousins had their own practices, and so I started saving about $250 a week every single year that I was at uni, every single week. So by the time I finished uni, I had sort of about $35,000 saved up, and I knew that was going towards a clinic. And it's really interesting. I had one of those kind of young love relationships. I had one of those uni relationships that lasted 4 years. So obviously 90% of the course. And obviously that relationship ended. But I remember at that point saying, I'm going to open my own clinic. And the response from my obviously, boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend at the time, was, if you open up a clinic at your age, you'll be a laughingstock of the profession.
Oh, that would have got him booted.
And
that would have got him booted.
I swear that I had no other determination other than to prove him wrong for the first 5 years I was in practice.
Right.
So call me mad, but and I think maybe there was a bit of the trigger from my grandfather there, where I just kind of was that young girl, and very different now. I look back and I'm certainly not that person anymore, but I once upon a time was deeply insecure and seeking validation through business success. And I thought if I can become successful, then I'll be able to kind of fill that void and be enough. And it took me a really long time, because I don't think I remember sitting there and reflecting, thinking I was proud of myself until I was 38 years old. And by that stage, I had, 40 staff and 2 clinics and a couple of businesses. And so I guess my drive, many people would say that that's quite sad, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I was sort of relentless and determined to get wherever it was. I didn't even know where it was I was going, Sammy. I just
I don't think that it's not like it's going to be any other way. I mean, at the time, you would have been younger than 38. And I guess sometimes at that age, you need a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, right? Like, a good chip on your shoulder will do wonders, until you can shake it off and then reflect back like you did and go, okay. But like you said, it probably couldn't have happened any other way.
Yeah. And then I think early on, when I did first open my clinic and then I opened a second one because I was trying to be seen by my grandfather, I was a terrible boss. And when I say terrible boss, I confused friend with friendly. I wanted to be friends with all of my staff, and I was, and I still look back to this day, and I never said no. I always said yes. I basically let a lot of them walk all over me for probably the best part of 8 years, and I worked myself to the bone compensating for working weekends because no one else wanted to. And then I kind of realized that you're never going to get anywhere trying to be friends with everyone. And I realized that I sort of needed to validate. The only person who was ever going to validate me was myself. And so I realized that you can be kind, but you can also be a good boss at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
And that's when everything changed.
Yeah. I'm not going to kind of let you off the hook that easily with this question partly because I spoke to Matt Cooper, who's now the president of Osteopathy Australia, and he credited you as one of the people that really inspired him when he was a student. He said that, you taught osteopathy with a lot of passion, and that really rubbed off on him. So I'm going to come back to the question, what gave you that passion, Jade? I mean, you're an osteopath, and you've practiced. I'm not sure what your practice life is at the moment. We'll get to that. But, at one point you would have had to practice and you would have had to have that drive and that love for osteopathy and the concepts of osteopathy. When did that become something that you were really that you clung on to and go, yes, this is osteopathy and this is what I want to do, and I love practicing in this way. So I'm talking about more clinical practice rather than business.
Yeah, okay, great question. When I look back at that, I think I can pinpoint when it was, and I think it was in my second year at uni, and we hadn't really been sort of touching people, so to speak, by this stage, as in hands-on treatment. And I got a job at the local footy club. And I got to go into the club rooms, and I was so embraced by the club because they were just looking for anyone to help. And I still didn't really kind of know what I was doing. So I sort of winged my way through, did a couple of sports trainers courses with Sportsmed Australia. And then next minute I was sort of the girl at the club who was one of the boys, and they just literally let me practice on them. And the way that they responded and how grateful they were was the first time I had a taste of recognition and reward for osteopathy. And that was being able to do these amazing, remarkable things with my hand and then really changing people's lives. And it might have only been like a hamstring strain where somebody was going to be off for, 4 weeks, and I kind of got them back on the field, but they really embraced me. And it was the gratitude that I got from doing the little things that I thought, gosh, if you combine a whole lot of little things, you can create a big impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuel there.
It was that footy club that made me just love then using my hands and practicing, and it gave me a really great nurturing environment to be able to learn. And I just, from that moment on, I just had a football club of 20 guys who just let me practice all my manipulations and everything on them. And I did. I still look back now, and there's some of the guys from that footy club who still reach out to me every now and again. They're like, I don't talk to anyone else about my injuries except you. And, we're talking, 25 years later.
Yeah.
So I would say that club, Aberfeldy in Essendon.
Great. And at university, I guess, were there any influential tutors or teachers or people that you really thought that inspired you?
Yeah, I started in the Cynthia Tucker cohort, but again, and gosh, I can't remember his name now. Gosh, he was brutal. And I failed first year at uni. I should make that known. I failed history and principles because I just could not learn it. I loved the history and principles, but I failed. And I also was offered like 2 subs because I just didn't know how to study. And I think that was back with the, dyslexic in me. I just had no idea how to study for exams. And it wasn't Dr. Good. Oh, I can't remember. And people that are listening will know exactly who he is. But they taught us HVLA together. And he pulled me into his room and he said, I don't think you're cut out to be an osteopath. You've already failed first year. And I think you should do nursing.
Right. Was it Philip Tehan? Was it Tehan?
No, that's who I started working for when I first came out. He was a doctor. He was a doctor of osteopathy. He best mates with Phil Tehan. I'll find out. We can put it in the chat. I can't even remember. I can't believe I don't remember his name. But then I also went through with Lainey Cameron. I had Wayne Mahmood. I loved pathology. I always talk all the time about, how much I love my pathology lecturer because I just kind of got it back then. But all of the lecturers back then, I felt like we were like a primary school. There was such a small group of us that we became so close. We were quite incestuous. I think there was about 8 couples out of like the 23 of us where we were
all above board. Let's just make that clear.
Exactly. But I was never really good at study, and so I kind of was always the one at the back of the pack. And then finally, by the time I got to fifth year, everyone wanted my notes because I had all these beautiful pictures that everyone wanted to, swap out and take
bad
home.
spelling.
Yeah, but bad spelling. I could draw amazing pictures, but bad spelling. But I think gosh, it was so long ago, but I do definitely attest, even Phil Tian and Wayne Mahmood, those people listening, and there, they'll know what I'm talking about when he goes to crack a neck. It was really, really good time.
Let me then combine what we've just spoken about. Look, what you I guess described to me earlier was a real spirit of entrepreneurship in those younger years of you growing up as a teenager and as a young girl. And I guess it's most entrepreneurs don't go into the health space, I guess, as a starting point. They tend to be, I guess, more in either tech or some kind of scale business, right? And we don't see the health space as something that you could really scale to that, Amazon level, for example. What is it that you think that's, I don't want to use the word odd, but what is it that you think is, I guess, unique about your personality or your person that's allowed you to combine that spirit of entrepreneurship with, I guess, a need and a want to help people?
Yeah, I think it's a good, most entrepreneurs are usually motivated by money. That's not me. I'm motivated by achieving and results, but also I think the recognition I'm really highly motivated by. And so being able to change people's lives and having that constantly reinforced, where I got to spend days with people, different walks of life. 1 minute I'd be treating Betty, and then Bill the concreter, and then a 14-year-old netballer. And every single day, I think I received that recognition that maybe I never got as a kid. Like maybe I literally think it was just that. I think I had these people telling me every day, Jade, you're amazing, you've changed my life. And I was like, you know what, gosh, I've waited 25 years for this. So I fell into this business that I absolutely loved, that fueled my personal need for validation at the time, but I also equally loved helping people. And then I kind of went, you know what? Not about I can make money off this. I can deliver a service and a business that creates opportunities for other people as well. And I think that's where I come unstuck even now, is I feel like, because I feel so indebted to my team in trying to lift the bar and increase their career pathway so that they never leave and have to go out and do it themselves, I feel indebted to constantly chasing more opportunities so that I can pass that on to them. And I'm still doing that now. I think that's why the new development came. To try and lift the ceiling and increase that career pathway so that they didn't ever get to a stage, which is where everyone gets to. And if you want me to vent, I'll vent about that a bit later. But, we've got the most horrendous career pathway in osteopathy in any profession that I've ever seen.
Right.
And I've studied a lot of business and a lot of business models, and ours is horrendous and embarrassing.
Right. We'll get there. We'll get to that. I want to stay on track with your development personally, because I think people are interested in you. So Jade graduates. She's going out into the big bad world of osteopathy, and she needs to get a job and work with somebody. What's going through your head there? What do I need to do? I'm Jade Scott.
Yeah.
What's your aim? What are you trying to achieve early on? Put business aside. I just want to talk clinical for a minute. How are you trying to develop yourself as an osteopath?
I wanted to work at a clinic that had an abundance of patients, because I knew that the only way that I could learn and develop was getting my hands on people. And there were literally 2 clinics for that. One of them was John Pitcher's, and it was a little bit too far away. And the other one was Phil Tian's clinic and Shane Heslop, which was still a 45-minute drive there and back every day, and an hour in traffic. And that was it. They were my only 2 options. So I also knew that I was the first female that they'd hired there in about 11 years, that was sort of still there under Shane Heslop, who was the wonderful first boss. And I hit the ground running. I had to build up.
How did you get them to hire you? I mean, how did you get? I mean, you're one practitioner. There's 2 clinics available. That's not a very good market ratio for you.
I just knew what I wanted and just really, I think I feel like I interviewed well, and I told them everything I was going to do for them. I'm going to come in. I'm going to work hard. If I have to see 70 patients a week, I'll do that. I don't care. I'll drive all the way from Essendon to Forest Hill, and I'll do that because I want to learn, and I want to be at the best clinic, and I'll do whatever it takes.
And so the lesson there for people is, I guess you got to go chasing that, and also I think you have to understand that nothing's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Like, you got to kind of go for what you want, and really look at how to develop your career early on, and get some volume. Like Jade was after volume, and she found the clinics that she wanted to work at. And I guess you presented yourself to them with solutions rather than problems. Like, a lot of graduates present as, I guess, I don't want to put this in a bad way, but they present as a problem. I need mentoring. I need this. I need, and then you've got a problem now that you need to solve. Now, a good business owner will have that in place to solve, but you presented yourself with a solution. I mean, I need this, but here's my solution. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This is what I can offer you. And so that's a really good way of making it a no-brainer for them to hire you. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, and even back then, I think they were lucky that I wasn't motivated by money, because I was on a 45% split, in their favour. So I took 45%. So, and they took home 55, and I wanted the mentoring as well. I really did want that from Phil Tehan. Never saw Phil Tehan once. I worked on days where he wasn't there, but I was working for Shane Heslop. But Shane, who again was brilliant, highly supportive. I still rave about him to this day. But he had also set up his own clinic. So he kind of utilised me as his associate to put in the room when he wasn't there. So unfortunately, at the end of the first 12 months, where I got mentoring in different ways, but not in the hands-on, so to speak, as much as I would have liked, because I was there filling the room when, my bosses weren't there. So I guess, in a roundabout way, it taught me that I could do it. And, I was seeing 70 patients a week by the end of the first year. And then what it made me realise is, if I'm going to do this for someone else, why don't I just do it for myself if I'm not really going to see them? So that was when I went, that's it, at age 23, I'm going to do this on my
So what was your track like, or what was your evolution like from, seeing 5-10 patients a week when you first started that first week to doing 70 a week? I mean, that's a big jump in 12 months, which is not unattainable and something that people can aim to get to. What's some advice you can give people to get to those numbers, I guess? What are some of the things they have to have in mind?
I think it's really hard. Generations have changed, and I think generational change is really important. We want different things, and so we should. We're 20 years apart from when I was a grad and where they're coming out now. And, if we circle back to the interviews, they're interviewing us now. It's not the other way around. And particularly when it comes to labour shortages, which I think is about to turn itself around. I think we're going to get many more grads coming out than jobs, which is the first time. I find osteo has about a 7-year peak and trough life, and I think we're at the starting to get back to the middle of the high end, where the favour will be back with the clinic owner at some point in the next 2 years. But for a long time, and particularly through COVID, there were such shortages that we were basically being interviewed. And that's how I went into an interview, is I was like, what do I need and who do I need to be to get this person to want to come and work here? But now, burnout, when we talked about it when we were younger, it was physical, in the physical sense, because there were not enough osteopaths, too many patients, and it was just like, let's sort of smash them through and not get physically burnt out. I remember in my first couple of weeks, I just wasn't osteo fit, I call it, and I would put my hands in ice buckets. Yeah. And I would also sit at home with a footy on my lap and just flick it left and right to try and get the speed up for my HVLA to make sure that I was, and I do kind of joke, but I did become very, what I would call, skilled through all my footy training. And, if you can crack a big 6'6" guy on a makeshift portable table in a club room, you can crack anyone. So I did. I iced my thumbs. I remember coming home with really, really sore hands and not knowing how to use my body. But I think there was no real other way than we just kind of had to get it done back then.
That pain is necessary, Jade. Like, I mean, you've been through pain also in terms of your business, right? And that's what teaches you. And I guess if you want to get to those numbers that you did, you've got to go through that. Like, the only way you get to that next level is to slowly increase the amount of stress that you apply to yourself and what you expose yourself to. And that has to be voluntary. You've got to voluntarily expose yourself to that stress. You did that, and you had to ice your thumbs and your hands. But from then on, it was fine. Like, it doesn't hurt anymore. It just, keeps going.
Yeah. And OsteoFit. Yep.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, you answered the question in saying that it's a different generation and they want different things. But for somebody who wants to get there, when you meet one of the grads and they tell you, I want to get to these numbers, I want to do 60, 70 a week within 12 months.
Yeah.
What's your advice to them? What do you say to them? What are the first few things that you think they need to do?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. And I think my clinic, if I can just sort of drop this in, it cops a lot of stigma a little bit. It's like, oh, go and work at Western Region Health. They'll just smash you with patients. I want to flip that around. And, our clinic attracts graduates that really do want to see high patient numbers and learn. We've got an incredible mentoring. We've got, a team of 6 to 8 mentors all looking after our grads. Now, that's way more than some get, but also we cap people out. So we don't allow our grads to see sort of more than 50, in the first 6 months. We have multiple wellbeing checks. And a lot of the time, the burnout side of things doesn't certainly come from the physical side of things. We could layer them with patients. Where I try and protect them now is the burnout in the mental sense. And I think what's happened over time and what I've seen over 20 years going from physical burnout to mental is we are now dealing with a generation that I call the Bluetooth babies of the world. These are young professionals age under 25 who were literally born with their phones attached to their waist and they don't disconnect. And when you don't disconnect, the other thing that's happened in healthcare, and I do a lot of work at Melbourne Uni at the moment with Jill Klein and medical students, compassion is in fashion and it's actually gone too far. I do a lot of study and delivery of courses in empathy in a clinical setting where cognitively you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes and you have to keep them at arm's length to feel what they feel. Empathy is so important in clinical practice. But what's happened is we've become this cohort society that praises compassion. And if we go back to the Latin term, compassion comes from the Latin term com party, which means com meaning with and party means to suffer. So by definition, compassion means to suffer with. So when you're offering compassion in a clinical setting, you're suffering with somebody who's in pain. You're multiplying pain. Compassion should be saved for our loved ones, for our parents, for our children who are sick. You want to take that pain away. You want to share in their pain and take it off them. We want to be compassionate. But when you're compassionate with patients and you're sharing in their pain, you're multiplying pain. You're taking it home with you. You're carrying it around.
Yeah.
And of course, you're going to burn out. So what we should be teaching is empathy in a clinical setting, cognitive empathy which is voluntary, rather than compassion, which is going way too far. And that's why a lot of these young ones are burning out, because they're far too compassionate. They carry the load and they take their patients' problems home with them. Yeah. And that's going to send anyone to burnout. And we should be teaching that more and more.
Yeah, one of the modules in the course that I'm teaching is a personality module, and one of the personality traits is agreeableness, right? And so the common tenets of that personality trait is compassion and politeness. And so when you're very agreeable, you tend to want to do things for other people. But it's usually the ones that are high in compassion and high in politeness, the ones that get walked all over and end up having burnout. And the best practitioners tend to be somewhat disagreeable. They know how to say no when they need to say no, and they're quite mild on compassion. They're not, they don't take it to the nth degree. But you're exactly right. I think I couldn't have said it better than that. And you've just mirrored exactly my thoughts as well.
Thank you. And I think it's one of those things where often as healers in healthcare, we talk about empathy being a strength. Whereas if you offer too much empathy and you can't regulate those emotions with emotional intelligence, it will become a weakness. And our greatest strength is knowing what our weaknesses are. So you can come out of uni and you can be highly empathetic because that's what we need in our industry. But it's about creating boundaries so that you can switch it off. And we need more mentors teaching these young ones how to actually detach themselves emotionally and offer empathy over compassion so that we can actually help them get through.
Yeah, and I think part of it's also just caring more for the outcome than for the actual person. Like they're coming to you with a problem. You need to really care about your own work and have your own standards and not go on that emotional roller coaster of, listening to people. And, patients will kind of tell you how great you are. And you know this because you said that you looked for that when you were a young practitioner. You wanted that kind of that instant gratification. But then if you listen too much to that, when something goes wrong and you don't get the outcome you're after, and you'll then listen to that. And so it's good to have your own measuring stick rather than be measured by what your patients, think of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
it's about a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset, right?
100%. Yeah,
and
definitely.
this is where a lot of the grads struggle as well. The A+ students, but even med students, they come out and as soon as they can't, and again, this is that resistance where, sorry, AT still, I really value you, but this find it, fix it, leave it alone. We're not designed to fix things. We're designed to help, nurture, mentor, and support.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we leave it alone either.
Yeah.
I think we find it, we help it regulate, and then I guess life deregulates and we're there again. And you need to just, I guess, be the person who is driving that process. You need to be patient-centered, but definitely you need to be driving that as a professional. Look, I want to talk to you also now. You've evolved yourself from, are you, just to give us a bit of background, tell us about your week. What's the week in the life of Jade at the moment? Like, what do you do in terms of going to work? Are you still doing clinical? Are you mainly just looking at managerial? What's happening? What's a week in your life look like?
I guess we probably have to go back 10 years ago to work out why my clinical life changed trajectory. And, I set up this business. I had a whole amazing team of staff so that I could do what, every woman wants to do and take a good 12 months off for maternity leave. And when my daughter was born and she was about 6 hours old, I had no signs, no symptoms, no warnings. I was paralysed from the jaw down and I was told I had a brain tumour and had 6 weeks to live. And here I am now. So certainly not virtue signalling by telling the story. My husband is the hero in the story because he's the one that
you didn't scare me because you're still in front of me. So I'm like, there's a happy ending to this.
Yeah. So, but, I was told by my neurologist after 18 months of not being able to feel down my left side, you're never going to treat again. I'm not going to clear you to be able to crack necks again. And my first response was, you don't know who I am. And I'm going to do my rehab and I'll prove you wrong, which I did. I did finally get cleared to treat after 2 years. But being pulled out of clinic when you're a very hands-on practitioner, and I had all intentions of coming back to all my beautiful patients, I handed them all over and I had a great team. And after 2 years, I thought, well, why would I just go and steal them all back? Mind you, I did take a few of my favourites back.
As you do.
But during that time, I thought, well, if I can't help people by putting my hands on them, I've got to help them in another way. And so that's when I tried, after 2 unsuccessful attempts, I got into Harvard Business School and studied global leadership because I think it was one of the things that we were really lacking in healthcare. And I still think to this day, and that's part of my passion now. So I went and studied halfway through my MBA and I've completed my clinical management excellence in organizational change. And so I then started Growth RX. So because I wasn't going back to practice, I thought I've got a couple of days in my week. I've got an amazing team. I let them, and I still am so grateful for them kind of holding up the fort. And the clinic actually grew without me in it. So there's a testament to the model that I run, is that, you know, once you get, there's no greater way to test your business than to actually be pulled and sucked out of it. And even some of my coaching clients, I say to them sometimes, they're like, Jade, I can't get out. And I said, well, fake an injury. Literally fake a disc bulge and get out for 3 months and hand your patients over so that you can actually get away. Thankfully, I didn't have to fake it and I didn't have to lie, but it was a very, very tough time. And so that was when I started Growth RX and became really passionate about one of the main things is teaching emotional intelligence in a clinical setting, because I think that it's 80% of what we do and the remaining is 20% skill and tactile and, you know, techniques, and increasing how we communicate and build trust with people. And I wanted to be able to not only understand it, but to be able to facilitate it with others and just kind of enhance the profession through academics, courses, teaching. So my normal week now is I have Mondays off, which is wonderful, but I'm usually doing something. My husband's got a supplements company. And then Tuesdays I'm out at the clinic, which I love. It's my favourite day. I have this motto where I appear everywhere and be nowhere. And most of the time I just go out and annoy the team. I have a wonderful job where I sort of employ myself and I don't really have to treat anymore. I'll do a couple of difficult or cases from local GPs, and I do some paediatrics, which I love. So occasionally I'll see a few patients on a Tuesday, but then I have meetings with my team leads and my mentors to make sure that all of the other team are looked after. And then Wednesday, Thursday, I do Growth RX stuff, a couple of posts, a couple of blogs, usually do some private coaching courses, which I never really advertise because they're usually booked out, and that's sort of helping with employment models and incentive models. And I just love more than anything my leadership courses, which I do 4 times a year. And then on Friday, sort of my errands day, but it's just, and a lot of time spent on site construction. So doing the building and making sure that I go and talk to the trades and help project manage that. And I'm about to also start a new venture. So I'll be a new small minority shareholder owner in a new healthcare company that I'll be able to announce soon. But I've been working on that for about 2 years. And that will probably be a PR launch soon. You're probably one of the first ones hearing it, but that's a big psychology play in Australia where I'm really committed to corporate health and also a little bit of tech in the mental health space.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, you heard it here first, guys.
Yes, you did. You did hear it here first.
So tell me about, I mean, running your business, Western Region Health, it's a quite a large practice. The volume's quite large compared to what we normally see. And so who looks after, I guess, the numbers for you? You know, looking at the micro of that business, do you have a practice manager that you've put in there that will look after things like the patient visit average and what the practitioners, how they're performing, and I guess the accountant side of it and all that kind of stuff? Yeah,
I lost my practice manager probably sort of mid-COVID. She'd been with me for 10 years. Mm-hmm. She was absolutely amazing, was one of my really good friends as well. But I think I leaned on her too much that I never ever thought she'd leave. And so when she left, I sort of really got sucked into the business again. And I was also carrying the battle scars of COVID and burnout. I didn't believe in burnout until COVID happened, and that was just because I just had nothing left to give. My bucket was, full and then some. And I promised from that moment forward that I would never, ever have one practice manager again. I would never, ever allow my business the injustice of not having a succession plan. So every single one of my staff now share roles. So I've got a business manager and an office manager who play the role of a practice manager. So one could get sucked out of the business. And interestingly, then I've also got myself and a CEO. We job share. And I've also got an operations manager. And I, 6 weeks ago, had my hip replacement. Then my CEO broke his hand and needed 6 weeks off 2 days later. And then my business manager then broke her leg and needed 4 weeks off. So myself, my CEO, and my practice manager are all off at the moment, and the clinic is running beautifully without us, which is a testament to the infrastructure, I think, in the career pathway of job sharing. And having a really robust career pathway that is a genuine career pathway, not just you're on 50, 55% and 60% and there's your career pathway. I spent a lot of time researching what Fortune 500 companies do to retain staff. And I took that and thought, well, if they can do it in those big companies, why can't I do it in my small one? So we talk a lot about governance. We talk about roles and responsibilities and shared roles, and we use that language. We use governance language, because if you want to treat a business with respect, you should probably use a language that respects it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's obviously not everyone. Obviously, I'm a much bigger size, so I'm not turning around saying if you've got 3 staff, you don't need to call yourself a CEO. But, we use the language that reflects and represents a bigger team so that we all know who we're going to. And so we all oversee each other's roles. And then I've got 6 senior mentors and managers, and they share roles as well. And I meet with them often. So it's certainly not the Jade show by any way, shape or form. There is a team that is far better than me now. And one of the best things I ever did is I went, just get out of their way, Jade. Just get out of their way. You've trained them well enough. Just let them do it.
What helps you keep your finger on the pulse, though? I mean, you need to be... we've all heard about you pull back way too far, and then I guess, some things could happen that could really make that business go downhill. How do you keep your finger on the pulse and make sure the quality's good and, all that kind of stuff? I know you've got things in place, but I guess, you always have to have your ear to the ground. How do you do that? Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you, and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities. The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode, and please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show.
I can see what's going on in my business within 10 seconds. I've got 2 really key spreadsheets that are filled out by my team leads. And because I'm dyslexic, I like color. So I know that if my spreadsheets are hot pink, then we're doing well. And if I know that there's a lot of yellow or a lot of red, then we're under sustainable numbers. So I can open that spreadsheet and go, oh, it's pink, and then close it down. But equally, I spent about $100,000 bringing in almost like a digital remote practice manager that is a dashboard that allows me to see all my data, because if you don't know your numbers and if you can't see your numbers within 10 seconds as a snapshot across your business, you're running in hope, and you can't run a business in hope. It needs to be, stats don't lie.
And how often do you look at those numbers?
Every day.
Every day. Right. So there we go.
It's only 10 seconds every now and again, but I open it up, look at it, close it, every single day.
Just to give people an idea that they might think that you're a lady of leisure and you're just kind of popping in and say, "Hello, everyone, let's have some tea and biscuits," and no, you're somebody who's obviously got a plan in place, and you've got things together, and you've obviously worked hard to get there, and you put a lot of the hours and the time and the planning. So we don't want people to think that.
I call it the $1 million spreadsheet.
Like I said, I don't want people to think that this thing just fell out of the sky for you.
No.
You've had to work for it.
Yeah, and it took me 12 years, exactly 12 years, to get the infrastructure right in the model that we run.
Yeah. Okay. And so you mentioned that you spent some time studying at Harvard Business School, and I think you've done some continuing education at Melbourne University as well. Tell us about some of the lessons from there. Like, what was the biggest takeaway from those? I guess those learning experiences.
Just that we are so small and insignificant. I got to sit alongside, I was just in awe of some of the people that I studied with. Head of security for one of the princes of Abu Dhabi, and the head of Google, and we have such what we believe to be big problems for ourselves, and then I sit alongside Akeem, who was the head of the Bank of Africa, who watched his family slaughtered by militia while he was 14 years old, and still deals every day with the corruption within the bank. And it just made me feel small, but in absolute awe. And I always am. Every single person that is listening, that is running their own business, I'm in absolute awe of all of the things that no one sees. And I think that's it. We only know a tiny snapshot of what goes on in somebody's life. And I think when you are carrying the load, and that's usually the way I describe it, having your own business is like carrying a really heavy backpack you just can't put down.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've done, and I guess it's an analogy that I love to talk about now, is we often have businesses where we can share responsibility, which is where I go, hey, this backpack's getting really heavy. Can you carry it for me for a while? And people will take it and they'll put it on and be like, yeah, boss, I got this. Let me carry the load for a while. And then after a while, they want to give it back. But ultimately, it comes back to you. And what I decided to do probably about 5 years ago, off the back of COVID, is say, no more sharing my backpack. Sharing the load is great, but that doesn't help me. What I need is chains of accountability where the buck stops with you. And I went out to my team and I said, get your own backpacks and start taking some of my shit out of it, and you carry it, and don't give it back to me. I don't want it back. So all of a sudden, my pack got much lighter. I had my own pack, and then they had their own. And it was really beautiful what happened. When you give people roles and accountability, they rise to the occasion. And I realized that I was in their way. I kept having to double check things or get them to ask me for permission. And I think my greatest success that I attest to now is not sharing responsibility, is creating lines of accountability that don't have me in them, so that people get to be a part of their own success and be really proud of themselves without feeling like they're under the Jade shadow. Because I love that people get to step out of that and have their own success, even though it's under Western Region Health. And, Michael Mannix and Aressa and Baz, who's come back, and my other mentors, Amanda and Emma and Brendan. I've got an amazing team of leaders, and I couldn't do it without them. And I say now, I don't share the load with you. You carry your own packs.
Yeah, great. And I guess then we talked about this earlier, but we'll get onto some of the career pathway stuff now that you want to talk about. But when you mentioned earlier, when you went out to work as a new graduate, that you were on a 45% split, and I guess at that time we're talking, I'm assuming late 90s, early 2000. It was a percentage model, a more of a contractor model that was out there. And I guess you decided that that wasn't the direction you want to take your own business into. When did that happen for you? And then tell us about that process of you kind of going, you know what, I'm gonna go for an employee model. Did you see it somewhere else? Obviously, I mean, other professions do it, but it wasn't really done. I guess we're in the that was the majority was more of a contractor model. Taking it to more of an employee model, I guess. What was the resistance you came up against, and what was the internal resistance from you? I guess what were some of the barriers in your way, internally and externally, to kind of get to the model that you're finally happy with?
Yeah, it was definitely a process. And I think you, like parenting, you parent the way that your parents taught you. All I ever knew was a contractor model, so that's what I started on. But my first contractor ever, Ben Gaminsky, was one of my really good friends as well. And we sort of went through high school together. And when I put him on as a contractor, it was actually that dissonance in my stomach that made me feel a bit sick, where he came in, I think he saw about 4 patients in his first week. And I was like, how dare I take 50% of his 4 patients that he's seen and then turn around to him and go, it's your responsibility to build your patients up. He had car payments, he had rent payments. And so I turned around to him and I said, it just didn't feel right with me. It was just that dissonance. It didn't feel right to take 50%, even though it was my clinic. And so I turned around to him and said, I'm going to give you an absolute retainer. As long as you earn this amount, come into work for me every day and I won't take a single cent from you until you earn a minimum. So I think I was already trying to kind of find an employment-based salary before bonuses were paid out, just with that alone, because the alternative didn't feel right. And so I started all my contractors started on retainers. So I didn't take any money until they hit a certain number of patients. So I did start like that from the beginning. But then what started happening is after about 5 years, all my contractors were really busy. And then, for example, their first patient wasn't till 11 o'clock in the morning. And they'd be like, Jade, I'm not coming in till 10:30 because my first patient's not till 11. And I'd be there in the morning and the phones would be ringing hot and my contractors weren't there. And they're like, but I'm not getting paid. So I started to be like, you know what, I can't grow my business. This model is stunting my business. I need you here from 9 o'clock so I can put people in. And they were like, well, if you want me here from 9 o'clock, you've got to pay me. So it just kind of was a clash of the business brain that I had. I was like, if I want to grow and scale, I've got to value people's time and I've got to pay them regardless. So that's kind of where it all started. And then, traject about, back in 2012, I was the second osteopathic clinic alongside Andrea Robertson, who decided, let's give this employment thing a go. And I sat down, I had 11 contractors at the time. And I said, I've been saving for 12 months to guarantee all of your salaries. But if you want to hit this certain salary, you've got to see this number of patients. And if you do, then I'll top you up with bonuses on 50%. So it was kind of the same model, but I reverse engineered it backwards. So it was like, okay, this is what you've billed. I've got to put aside your base. I've got to pay your super. And then I've got to put aside some money for your entitlements for when you go on holidays. Oh, and there's $400 left over, I'll top you up. And that's the dumbed down version of my model, right? That's exactly what it is. So, and I said to them, I promise you won't be worse off. I'm going to run these models in parallel. Here is you as a 50% contractor. Here is you with all of the stuff I have to pay you topped up to 50%. I will run them in parallel. And if at the end of 12 months, you are not worse off, then we scrap the other model and we move forward with employment. And I lost 1 contractor out of 11. And that was just because she changed careers. And the whole entire team, and I've still got 4 of them with me today who now have long service leave, who've been employed with me for 14 years.
Right.
And that's kind of how it started. And then I had to layer the model and try it and test it and tweak it. And I sort of did that over 12 years. And then establishing career pathways where now we put on new grads who don't get any bonuses because all of the bonuses they would get go to the mentors. So I kind of take from the bottom, give to the top, create the accountability where I'm like, well, you're not getting any bonuses as a grad, but if your mentor isn't looking after you, then they don't deserve that money. Fully transparent, all open. I share all my spreadsheets. I'm not trying to hide anything. No one thinks I'm trying to But what happens is we grow the clinic, and then I've got more money for culture, for mentoring, for weekends away. So everyone's invested. Everyone's invested in, rather than these siloed contractors, but I'm a contractor, I'm in it for myself, but it's my own business. People who I believe, from my experience, were like, well, they would make decisions as if saying, well, this is my own business, but it's all the things that you would never do if you had your own business. So they kind of hold clinic owners at ransom, and there's a little bit of blackmail that goes back and forth. But equally, on the same side of that, there's a lot of people who are employing now doing a really terrible job of it, who are capping out, not offering bonuses, and working poor graduates, seeing too many patients and not giving them any incentives. So
I think also, it comes back to control, right? And so control and responsibility, like your model gives you a lot of control, but it also puts a lot of responsibility on you to make sure that you've got the patients there for people to see, right? So and that, I guess, protects you from the ATO and from the government and people looking into you and having that blurred line there between contractor and employee. And it allows you to scale because you know that you can ask people to get there at 9 and leave at a certain time. And so it affords you a lot of control, but it also puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. And I guess if you then move back down to the contractor model, you lose control as a practice owner, right? But you don't have as much responsibility. And so it's just what you're after, right? A question around that, what I wanted to ask you was, how, I know I'm in Sydney, and it's a different landscape out here in terms of what's available to us. How important has it been to have a steady flow of graduates, to having that employee model, be something that you can sustain and have and growth and scale?
I think it's sort of not so much a steady flow of employees, it's what they were wanting. And for a really long time, I think off the back of COVID, when the economy was a little bit volatile, these new graduates did want a fixed and a guaranteed income. So they kind of gravitated towards jobs that, gave them that security, that financial security. But also I think, and this is where it comes unstuck, is I offered both models for a really long time. If you want to be a contractor, I'll put you on as a contractor. If you want to be an employee, I'll put you on as an employee. Where I feel like the disservice is done to our industry is where these young ones don't get a choice. It's like, well, we only run a contractor model, that's it. You got to go out and get all your own patients and you got to have your own business. They have no idea. I taught business at the uni for 8 years to the likes of Matt Cooper and a lot of the others. And now that syllabus was never replaced when I left the uni after 8 years of teaching it, which is sad. But these young ones come out and they got no idea that, am I employed? Am I a contractor? And all of a sudden they've got to put aside GST. Am I charging GST? Am I paying GST? No one's teaching them that stuff anymore. But it's when the choice is removed. That's the issue that I have. Is you're a new grad, you get no choice but to be a contractor. And if you see 2 patients this week, I'm going to take 50%. That's just an asshole act. And then you could kind of get to frame it by going, well, it's your own business, you got to go out and get your own patients. I don't really believe in that. I believe in
when you said that you offered both models, contractor and employee, I don't think that was the kind of contractor model that you were giving people. It wasn't like, the contractor model that you were giving people was, did you ask them to go out and find their own patients, or did you the 50% that you're paying, or the 60%, or whatever it is that you're paying, it's not a set fee. You're paying something, like you're paying it for something. It's for reception and for marketing and for a website. And so why isn't all that, my question to the people that are, getting contractors on is, why is it that you can't provide the patients for someone to come in and be a contractor? Why are you asking them? It's good to encourage people to go to a sport, go to a sports club and network. And I'm sure you do that with your employees even, right? It's not nothing to do with being contractor or employee. Yeah. But, that's different from saying go out and get your own patients. Networking is networking. But then, I think as a business owner, even if you are running a contractor model, it's imperative that you have a supply of patients for people. Otherwise, don't take them on.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. You reverse engineer it backward. You're like 75 grand, including super, on a contractor model on a 50% split, working 44 weeks of the year, $110 a consult. You're looking at 43 patients to get them 50% and you 50%. You halve that, it's 21 patients. If you can't provide somebody 21 patients and let them take the first 21, don't put them on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, was there any kind of resistance against some of the things that you were doing when it came to the
Yeah,
employee
the,
model?
the whole industry hated me for a long time. I used to rear my head and be like, don't do this, don't do that. And I kind of soon muzzled myself after a while. I didn't really have the professional maturity back then, about 15 years ago, when I started raising my voice about, and, whilst I'm an advocate for employment, I'm pro fair. I couldn't care less what the model is that you run, as long as it's fair and humane and people are getting paid at least the minimum award. And, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If you're doing the wrong thing and trying to lace it as something else, but there are some models out there that work beautifully. There's some contractor models, Kevin Finnan runs an amazing rent facilities agreement model. It works perfectly. I'm not out to slam those that are doing it well. It's just, peace of mind is a wonderful thing, right? And if you're going to bed at night sleeping thinking, oh, are my team employees, then they probably are. So you should probably pay them like them. But, or equally, there's a lot of contractors out there where you've got employees who want to do the right thing, business owners who want to do the right thing, but they're at the ransom of their staff who are like, no, I want to be a contractor, otherwise I'm going to leave. So I feel sorry for them too, because there's a huge number out there that are like, oh, well, if you go changing me to an employee, I'm going to leave. So that's equally hard as well.
Look, you're going to get bad apples on both sides. Hopefully, that's not the majority, and then also hopefully that we grow as a profession and people start to understand that certain standards. And once we have certain standards in place and people understand them, hopefully, especially new graduates, don't get caught out. I want to then move on, and I guess you mentioned earlier about career pathways. We've discussed the model that you've kind of championed. Tell us about what your view is on what the career pathways are like within osteopathy, and what do you think the profession needs to do to improve on that?
Yeah. It's not even osteo now. I work with a lot of physios too. So let's kind of start with that. I had a physio client about 3 weeks ago who said to me, my contractors start on a 40%, my staff start on a 40% incentive bonus, and I give them 1% increase a year over 5 years, capped at 45%. I said, I hope they leave you. Right. And they just looked back at me and I said, a 1% pay rise? How insulting. And yet we do it in osteo because we can't start a career pathway. We put people on 50% and then we go, oh, we don't want to jump to 55, so I'll give you 52 and a half. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when you kind of go doing the math, it's $2,500 a year, but we're siloed in this toxic culture that we can only extend people by these percentages, and you don't want to jump them to 55 straight away, so you give them 52 and a half. It's insulting. It's insulting, right?
Yeah.
Or don't frame it like that. If you're going to give somebody a pay rise, talk about it like a $3,000 pay rise, but most of the time we can't. And this is where we've created our own dagger in our back, where we sit there and we cry when people sort of leave and go down the road and set up their own clinics, and we've kind of all been there. But if you have somebody capped on a 50% split or on a 55% split and don't move them, it's the only choice they have is to go down and start up on their own, because you've not given them a career pathway or any opportunity to sort of stay with you. And the only way to provide, Harvard Business Review says that we need 3 things to retain people. Number 1 is adequate and appropriate remuneration, whether that's whatever that is. The second one is culture, which is a healthy culture. And the last one is career progression. So if we can provide a good remuneration and pay and good culture, if we're not providing a career pathway, the evidence suggests that they're going to leave. You can do everything you like in those top 2, but if you don't provide a career pathway, then people are going to leave. And I think I kind of clued onto that. And if I don't give people a stepping stone to continue to rise up, then the obvious choice for them is to create a career pathway for themselves.
And what do you think? What do you think people are after in terms of career pathway? Like, let's break it down. I mean, you've got especially when you find like a superstar, you got yourself an osteopath, they're doing really well, their numbers are great, they've been with you now for, 4 or 5 years. Take us through the next, say, 10 years. Where do you think, what is it that can be offered to that particular person that would make them stay with you rather than go and open up shop? Not that there's anything, I mean, that might make you really happy that they've come to you and they said, after I've been here with you for 12 years, it's time to go out on my own. And you seem like the kind of person that would encourage that and probably help them along the way too. But let's say, they've been with you for 5 years, they're a superstar, they're doing really well. And what do you do, Jade, to kind of give them that pathway to hang around for the next 10 years?
Yeah. So I think this is why I created the Key Motivators tool, which is basically just understanding people's workplace language. So from all the research I did from 2012 right up to 2022, we established that there's 7 motivators that keep people to stay in the workplace. The first one is money, but not everyone's motivated by money, yet that's the only carrot we dangle. I'll give you 50, 55% or 60, and let's hope that you stay. So firstly, you've got to establish whether they actually are motivated by money. And at the moment, my data is suggesting that only 9.7% of the population is motivated by money. So that's 1 in 10. So what's holding everybody else there? The second one is appreciation from the boss or direct reports. And that's just a genuine thank you, I see you, I value you, and I am so grateful that you're here. The next one is recognition from peers. So having things in place that are like announcing Google reviews or giving each other an employee of the month or allowing somebody to be seen by people other than the boss. And that is peers or patients or practitioners, or having a platform where the team can say, hey, you did an amazing job with Jenny and I value you.
I've always wanted to have one of those bells, those big, hedge fund firms, whenever they close a sale or you just go and you just ring it really.
Maybe I might get one of them. I'm going to get
and
one.
I thought, do you reckon that'll work in a clinic to have one of those big bells? And, when you get like a clinical breakthrough with a patient.
Yeah, when someone gets a 5-star Google
That's
review,
right. The patient, the practitioner comes out and just starts ringing the bell.
Yes, that's not a joke, Sammy. I might even get one of those. I'm going to take a photo and send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then the next one from that is meaningful service. So some people are just motivated by purposeful work and being sort of in that allied health industry. Then you've got investment, which is personal professional development and growth. Okay, so going to courses, upskilling. So, I gave a couple of years ago one of my staff a $2,000 bonus, and she kind of just started crying and looked back at me, and I was like, what's happened? Why are you ungrateful? Oh my gosh, entitled, blah, blah, blah. And she said, all I wanted was to go to that women's health course, and you didn't give me the day off. And I was like, I missed it. Right? So you kind of feel like you're doing things for them, but then you sort of miss the mark. Then another one is autonomy, and that's self-determination. It's not always about, I only want to work 9 to 5. It could be, I want Mondays off to go to my big Italian family dinner. So, or it could be, I need Tuesday and Thursday afternoons off because I love playing footy. It's just being able to have the flexibility around the diary to keep people happy. And then the last one is responsibility. Some people are motivated by roles and titles. Some people aren't. But, I've got a lady at the moment, and I just made her Bacchus Marsh admin manager. Didn't give her a single cent extra. But I made her the manager of my admin team in Bacchus Marsh. She cried, and her productivity's gone up by about 50% just by giving her the title.
Yeah.
So it's understanding your team. And so in answer to your question about a career pathway, firstly, find out what it is that they actually want and then create a pathway that actually nurtures it. And it doesn't always have to be money. Money, we know, adequate remuneration needs to be there, but it doesn't always have to be paying everyone more. Sometimes financial security is exactly that. It's just stability. Some people are motivated by financial stability, not earning more or needing more.
Yeah, okay. And have you found any common, traits amongst those who end up wanting to further their career, and those that are more interested in stability? Risk. Some people are more risk averse, and are happy kind of taking more risks, and some people aren't.
Yeah.
Have you found that there's been any kind of traits amongst those who are willing to kind of push and those that are just happy with stability?
Such a great question. I have collected 3 years worth of data now. And even in my own clinic and some other clinics that I work with now, if you get a data pairing where somebody's motivated by autonomy and money, they will go open up their own clinic within 4 years.
Yeah, right.
If you hire a new grad, this is why it's so good for interviews and hires. You know, anyone who's listening can go and use my tool for free. They can sign up and, you know, get 5 quizzes, use it for interviews. I will always do it in an interview. The best grads for longevity are those that are motivated by meaningful service and investment, or appreciation and investment. Those that are, it's one of our 7 human fundamental needs to continue to grow. It's why I called it Growth RX. It's a prescription for growth. If we're not learning, we're not growing. And, you know, even at a cell level, we start to become stagnant. So, you know, happier people are more productive, they're learning, they're evolving, and they're growing personally and professionally. And so any career pathway has to have the mentoring. So that's a given. So if you're a clinic out there and you don't offer mentoring, even if it's just you and one other, people want to learn. They want to evolve because it's part of our 7 human fundamental needs, way beyond just the workplace.
Yeah, okay. All right. So I guess then in terms of career pathways, you've answered that really well. And from what I understand, your advice is to understand what people's motivation is, and then go and put things in place to nurture that and to hopefully keep them around for a while. And so you discussed earlier also about burnout, and we talked about how maybe when we were going through, it was more of a physical burnout, but now it's more about a mental, I guess, an emotional burnout from just being plugged in for too long. There's been also some problems, I guess, I don't know if problem's the right word, but it seems like we have a high attrition rate at the moment, and like the profession, and I'm talking about osteopathy. I know that you're kind of into, across a lot of the allied health and physiotherapy as well. But in terms of osteopathy, attrition is becoming a bit of a problem, and there's a bit of a bleed there. Can you comment on that? What do you think's going on, and how do you think we're going to address that as a profession?
I think it comes back to motivation again. Motivation is the action of emotion. They both come from the same word, emotive. And so if you are not emotionally attached to something, you won't be moved to act. And I think what happens is they come out of uni and they've been told they're going to get burnout. And and don't take a full-time job, just start part-time, building up full-time. And this is usually by academics who aren't even working in clinical practice. So that really riles me. They even do an assignment on how to mitigate burnout in their final year. Yeah. And one of the issues that I have with that, it's like in counselling, right? If all you study is divorce, it doesn't teach you how to be in a happy marriage. Yeah. It just teaches you what makes a bad marriage. And if that's all we're learning and studying, that's all we'll see. So if we've got these new grads and all they're learning about is burnout and burnout mitigation, it's hypersensitive, right? They're hypersensitized to it. So by the time
they're looking for it too.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I say to my, you know, even to some new grads, 50 patients a week at 30-minute consults, that's 25 hours. You're getting paid for 38. You're getting paid for another 13 hours of work, paperwork, mentoring, training, support. All I'm asking you to do is 25 hours, and that's 50 patients. Somewhere along the line, we've had this anchor bias that, 50 patients is too many. And then that's been funneled on through a toxic narrative, I believe, where we should be lifting these guys up. You know, it's been 5 years. Are you so excited? Get out. Let's start getting some hands on some patients. And talk about the emotion of it. If we can talk about the emotion of it, they'll be motivated to act in it.
Do you think that there's a lack of excitement about osteopathy upon graduation? Do you think they almost don't know what's happening or can't put the puzzle together, can't put the pieces together? Is that a problem? Are you seeing that? I mean, you've employed people for a long time, and so the quality of graduates that you're seeing, that you saw maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago versus what you're seeing now. And when I say quality, I'm not taking a dig on the person. It's not a personal thing. But in terms of having the acumen of somebody who can come out and know what to do and treat, I mean, that relieves a lot of stress. There's the stress of actually communicating with people, and then there's the stress of actually putting a treatment together, a treatment plan, formulating treatment strategies. These things we would expect the education would cover. And then somebody like you, Jade, can teach them that communication, what to say, how to really empathize and use, empathy at arm's length, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
You can teach them that. But do you think there's a problem with the actual, the osteopathy or the clinical side of things? Are they unsure about what to do? Is that creating another layer there that adds to the burnout?
I think the best way to, firstly, I can't speak on behalf of an entire cohort. I think that would be really unfair.
But you've seen the trend over the years, right?
Yeah.
You've had
and I've got some amazing new grads now, and I think the graduates that we get gravitate towards our culture and want to sort of be a part of that, and they've come in and done obs, so they know that we're a good fit. I think what I will say is over the years, even though they feel like they're semi-confident, there's a huge lack of conviction. And that's different. Confidence is, even if you can't be confident in your skills or your job or your prognosis, what I found is that they are grossly lacking in conviction. And conviction, by definition, is a firmly held belief. I believe that osteopathy works. I believe I'm going to change this person's life. And I believe I'm going to create amazing results. They lack conviction. And so only then, once you build up their confidence, does that conviction come back. But you need positive mentors around you to say, hey, osteopathy is amazing. You're going to change people's lives. I can't wait. What an amazing profession. They lack conviction. And a lot of them, I find, don't even believe that it works. And the thing is, if you're...
Why do you think that is? I mean, go with me on this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they don't believe it works? You went through, did you believe that it worked when you graduated?
Yeah, I still do.
And so I did, and I had great people teaching me and mentors. And I think a lot of it is seeing other people do it well and getting results with it. I mean, when you go and observe practitioners who have been practicing for 20 plus years, and they practice it and they do really well, it makes you excited. And you hear the anecdotes, someone will come in and say, I saw a patient the other day, I treated them for their lower back pain and they had some incontinence. They came back 2 weeks later and the incontinence was gone. The back pain's improved, but for some reason they've had incontinence for the last 5 years and that's disappeared. That's amazing, things like that. That inspires you. That I feel that's lacking, but I'm talking to other practitioners out there and I want to get that. I want to know if I'm wrong, first of all, but also I want to get your views on it. What do you think is causing this lack of conviction? Because it's happening at the university.
Yeah. Look, this is the last cohort coming out who were at the tail end of and still within the COVID mix. They had far less patients, even RMIT now, and I'm devastated. They don't even have internships anymore. And I was one of the drivers to get internships into Victoria University 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've always taken interns because you've got to come and see it to believe it, anything, right? Like see these changes, see these amazing practitioners who are treating these people who idolize them, and then they walk out going, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. These grads need to be mirroring and absorbing the energy. And when it comes to, and I love all this stuff as well, I'm not going to go all witchcrafty on you, but there is one frequency that is far more attractive to anyone than love. When you're in the vicinity and you can actually feel it. And they did a whole lot of studies on frequency, and the highest frequency, the most attractive frequency for human beings is authenticity. It's 4 times more attractive than love in itself.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is create this authenticity, I think, again, by going out and watching and learning. I was always observing. I was always going and knocking clinics. And maybe it's the clinic's fault. Maybe they've closed their doors more since COVID. Maybe they don't have time to let them in. But I think that's one thing we can do is just let them in, let them watch, let them see, and use a positive narrative.
Yeah, you can criticise the osteopathic profession about a clear, maybe career pathways or models of employment or whatever it is. I think one of the things we do really well is that we do open our doors to. Nobody's ever said no to me in terms of observation. I've never said no to anybody. I haven't met a practitioner that's ever said to me that they were too busy to take on a student. Everybody that I've interviewed on this podcast is always happy to do that. So it's one of the things I really love about our profession is that I think that kind of, we want to pass on osteopathy. We like to show it off, to
I
younger
think they're asking
students.
less though. The students are asking less,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
more
I agree with you
encouragement.
there.
And I
Yeah,
think since COVID, we've had this massive societal recalibration where people value their personal time. It's like, well, when I have got time, I'm not going to go and observe. I want to spend time doing things I love, and that's equally okay. But we've got to get them loving osteopathy, not like a job anymore, but like a passion again and like a calling. I think osteopathy is far less a calling now
yeah,
and more of a job. And that's what I've seen over the last 20 years. It was a
yeah,
calling for me. We
yeah.
were
You're right.
healers 20 years ago, and now it's a job.
Yeah, I think I mean the tilt towards evidence-based practice has also played its part there. And you can have whatever opinion you want on that. I think both evidence-based practice and evidence-informed practice, I guess, can live side by side. You don't need to, be one way or the other. But there is a place also for phenomenology and just hearing people about their success stories, and that really gives you a sense of that passion that you were talking about. We don't want to lose that, I think, from education. And speaking to somebody over the weekend, who said that we put a lot of these guest speakers come into the university, and three people would turn up. Now, we can also, we can criticize universities as much as we like, but at the end of the day, if you're if you're a student of osteopathy, you got to go chasing it. It's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. You got to go chasing it, and you got to have that hunger and that drive for it. And if you do that, it will reward you. It's so bloody rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding professions I think it's the most rewarding profession. And yeah, I guess to the students out there listening, you just got to go chasing it. You've got to be there and want to actually find out more about it. So I asked you a question earlier about, I guess, education, and we've discussed your the model that you run with the employment model. I want to put a little theory to you, and if I'm mistaken, please push back on me on this. More and more clinics, especially in Melbourne, are taking up the employee model, and I think partly because there's the market for it, the availability of osteopaths is there. I mean, it's hard to have an employee model without employees to hire, and so part of the drive on that is that there has been an availability of graduates coming out. Do you feel that, I guess, if you're one of the, and you've seen this, Jade, you've seen a student who graduates, when you look at them and you go, this person's going to be successful, you just know it. They've got all that kind of like superstar, their touch. When they touch you, they've got experience beyond their touch. They know how to communicate. They're personable. They're passionate. They know how to put together treatment plans. Things kind of going well for them. Do you think that those kind of people are still seeking employment, or do they seem to be more of the people that either seek to go into their own business or seek more of a contractor role? Hello everyone, just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So, the two best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes, so for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy, and back to the show.
I think it's hard to say. I think in particular it's less about the model and more about the culture that those type of graduates will seek.
Okay.
So I think regardless of the model, they will find the right fit for them because they know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they will go and find a busy clinic or a clinic with an opportunity where somebody's going to step away and maybe they can sweep in and buy the clinic or have it gifted to them.
Right.
I think when they know what they want, the model is irrelevant, but the environment is more important.
Okay.
And I think they will seek out the environment, which is probably not the answer that you wanted. So outside of that, if it comes to either model, it comes down to what motivates them.
Well,
if they're motivated by money, they will
my
do a
question is,
contract
are you attracting people that are after stability? You know, when you offer that kind of model, are you attracting people that are maybe, if they're unsure about their skill set, at least they have that stability where they can get the mentoring and then nurture their skill set? Do you find that, there's that going on? Or is that...
It is, but there's also not stability in that because if they're not hitting KPIs, because I've got to pay them regardless, then I've got to let them go because I can't afford to keep them, right? So you don't have all the luxury of all the stability without bringing them. We give them some respite for 6 months and be like, you know what, we're not tracking patient numbers. We just want you to learn. But equally as well, I think when they are really hungry and motivated, they will ask in the interview, even if it's a bonus, even if it's just a base salary, they'll be like, do you have incentive structures as well? So if you said no to that, you probably would lose those type of grads because they're kind of hungry to earn money as well and to get the mentoring and training and stuff. But they might also seek out a contractor role because they're like, you know what, I want to be responsible for my own autonomy and how many patients I see and what days I see.
Yeah.
So I think Melbourne is lucky because we kind of have got the different opportunities and the smart grads who know exactly what they want will actually find the clinic, not the model.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, well then, I guess moving on from that, tell us about what's happening now with the development that you're currently, give us some insight onto that because that's a large project that you're working on. Tell us what you're doing there. What are your hopes and dreams for that, I guess?
We just got robbed. So they stole $70,000 worth of copper and cable, so that wasn't fun. The people say business is hard. Well, try construction, that's worse. I've watched enough grand designs to know that there's always delays and stuff, but we were on track. But that was my dream. I remember standing out the front of the clinic when I first opened the clinic. I bought it for $90,000 and I bawled my eyes out because I had no money left. Again, did all the renovations. And I sort of played this game of Monopoly over 15 years where I bought the house next door and bought the house next door and then bought the house next door. So collectively 4 blocks in a row. And it's one of those things where you probably hear more and more. And if I say the word manifestation, it's going to start popping up in all your Facebook threads and everything now because, the powers that be are all listening.
Yeah.
But I believed, I saw that building and believed it to be true for 10 years. It was never, ever going to not happen in my life. And every day I drove to work and I saw the houses next door and then I saw them knocked down and it was just always going to be a thing. And I think when it comes to great leadership, and I do pride myself on being a passionate, fearless leader now for my team, one of the best things I think that I was able to draw on was sharing an inspired vision for the team. And so for 10 years, I talked to my team about this building next door and this new development. And I swear a lot of them stayed on the journey because they want to work in it.
Yeah.
And so that's how I lifted the career pathway. I'm like, you know what? I know you've hit the ceiling now, but in 2 years' time, I'm going to build that building. And in 1 year time, that building will be finished. And in 6 months' time, we're going to move across to that building and we're going to get 2 more consult rooms and a strength conditioning space and psychology and occupational therapy and speech. And so that's the career pathway. And I think I did that for them. So it was really easy to fulfill at the end because I was doing it for more than just myself. But equally, I kind of wanted to prove that you could do more than just a clinic bricks and mortar in osteo. I think I wanted to sort of wave that flag to say, hey, we can actually do great things. Yes, I saved a lot of money and yes, I went without for years and years and years. But I also equally paid my team really well. And what's interesting is when you pay your team well, they work harder, which means you earn more and you profit more, and then you get to buy more great things that then everyone benefits from. And I think my team as well, I could go buy a holiday house down at Portsea, But
Yeah.
instead, I've chosen and said, hey, we've all earned this money and I want us all. And yes, I've got this building and it's going to be my super and I'm going to retire a asset-rich, money-poor old woman. But I did say I'm going to create something that we're all going to benefit from. And then the other great part of leadership is you have to, if you want to maintain trust, you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And so I told them for 10 years and for 5 years and for 2 years, no matter when they came into the clinic, I'm going to do this. And then you kind of feel like you're at the ransom of your own promise. And so I think, you know, the long and short of that new development is I think I said it once and I said it enough that I felt like if I didn't do it, I was going to be a liar. I was going to make a liar of myself and break all the trust. So I had no choice, Sammy, to build this monster. And it was always going to be 2 stories. And then I found out that there was a clinic in Sydney that was 1,400 square meters. So I had to be 1,410. Just not that I wanted to win, but, you know. And anyway, now there's a bigger one. So it's not about being the biggest, but I certainly put a 3rd story on that I didn't need, and now my mortgage is going to remind me of that.
Well, let me ask you about that then. I mean, it's a big project, and it's kind of like going to be a bit of a juggernaut there. What are some of the challenges for you? I mean, it's a big thing you're taking on. There's a lot of rooms to fill. It's a lot of patients to have go through the place every week. You know, you've got it's going to be a big mortgage, and you're going to pay that off, and you're going to make sure. Like, you know, what are some of the challenges there? Like, what do you know, is this something that is going to be, I mean, are you going to find a nice groove and just sit there, or are you going to be more on top of this than what you are doing now?
I think one of the things that I am quite blessed with personally is being able to reverse engineer things backward. So what I actually did do, and the build is costing $5 million. But what I did is we'll have this building. I'll have 27 consult rooms. I can break it up into 4 parts. I know that my mortgage off $5 million, if I was kind of to borrow 4.3, is roughly 350 grand a year in repayments. Now, most people would be like, oh my God, that's outrageous. Whereas I sit there and I go, I can break that building into 3 tenancies. I can pay 150 on the ground. Then I've got 3 more tenancies above me paying 100 grand. It's actually positively geared by 100,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, but you've got to be able to reverse engineer it to get. So I'll be kind of sitting pretty at the end once it's fully tenanted.
Yeah.
But equally, I had to save for 3 years because I had to save 350 grand to be able to have the money there to pay off the mortgage for the 12 months of the build.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of play with money and a lot of figures and maths and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. But once you have the facts and once you have the figures, it doesn't become scary anymore.
Right. And you're in the build phase at the moment. So are you currently now, how's it going? Are you currently leasing at the moment? Like, are you currently leasing off the plans? Are you in discussion with people? How's that going for you?
Yeah. It's fully tenanted out now. Yeah.
Yep.
So I've got a psychology group above us. I've got an orthodontics group on the top floor who are currently doing their fit out, and then an occupational therapy and a speech pathology group.
Right.
And then the existing building that we're moving out of is having hopefully Ballarat orthopedics and sports medicine group, and then there's a podiatrist going in there as well. So I started putting the feelers out 2 years ago within the industry of who wanted to grow and expand, and I said, I'll create a space for you.
Right. And I guess when you meet with people that are going to become your tenants, tell us about some of the value stuff that you discuss with them. Is it something where you're going in with a more of a business mindset, or do they have to kind of share common values with you?
Oh, 100%. And it's that shared vision. I was like, I want all these modalities under one roof. I want to bring these services out to the western suburbs. We all want to leverage off each other. And, you know, I said no. Yes, I wanted to fill the space, but I said no to about 3 tenants just because they didn't fit that. And, you know, I wanted to be able to stand at the very end of it once it's finished, not only with tenants, but to be really proud of services that I've delivered to a community that really needs them.
Yeah.
So I've kind of held really firm with that, and I've sort of, even one space we had left over, I was starting to get a bit nervous that it wouldn't be filled, but I wasn't just going to put someone in there just because.
Right.
Either.
Is there a coffee place? Can you get a good coffee there?
No, council wouldn't let me
do
that. I know. I wanted to do smoothies and that sort of stuff, but there's a shopping centre across the road, so they put in restraint.
Get your OC and then,
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so good luck with it. I hope you will be successful. But yeah, I'm really grateful that you're an osteopath doing this. And so I want to then, I guess, finish off with one little topic. Well, it's not really a little topic, but you've been in this profession for over 20 years. What is it that you're very optimistic about moving into the future with osteopathy? What do you like about what's in our future?
Do you know, it would have been hard to answer that question about 6 months ago because I was feeling a bit flat. Like, honestly, was feeling a bit flat, hearing lots of noise. And what's made me optimistic is our two most recent grads. And
Right.
it was so refreshing where I thought we were kind of doomed and the quality of the grads that were coming out were needing so much work. And I was really kind of sympathetic that a lot of them went through COVID, but they took a lot. And the last two grads that we put on, sort of shout out to Oscar and Luke, they're just jets. And they remind me, they've kind of got that grit back again. They're lovely guys. They have that passion for osteo again. And so I'm really optimistic that they still exist. And if I've got a couple, then there's
Yeah.
many, many, many more.
Right. Isn't it wonderful though when you see them and they just get it and they're getting it and it's working for them and they're happy and they're making money and
Yeah.
all these things are falling into place. It's
And to add
yeah.
to that, we just got an application from a new female graduate who actually gave me her CV as a website. And so I know that a lot of the unis are making them do, assignments on burnout. And, again, that's me personally. And I can understand that uni are trying to protect them. But one of their assignments was building a website.
Yeah.
And so she sent me this link, which has got her CV and her bio and her photo. And I was like, good on you. Like, it was just really cool. And I like, talk about move with the time. So one of the things that I'm most excited about is that we're hopefully going to get the conviction back in these graduates.
Right.
But they are going to be tech savvy. They're going to be social media savvy. They're going to be confident in front of the camera, and they're going to be able to blow our profession up through scale and through reach.
Yeah.
By using these platforms that we never had access to be able to get to the hearts of many, many more people that we could never have even anticipated doing. So I love and I'm excited that this next generation of Bluetooth babies are going to use, hopefully, if we can mentor them to not have compassion and not burn out, they'll leverage scale in the platforms to get our message out and hopefully share that message and grow osteo for good.
Yeah, great. And I guess what are you still concerned about? Like what still gives you, what still gives you the shit sometimes?
Our archaic remuneration model, and I do really believe that as to a degree, contractor models create toxic cultures and siloed businesses within businesses. And I understand the nature of it and I understand why they're there, but there's so much joy that comes from collaborating in osteo. And I think like that one in, all in. And so you might see these clinics where hopefully they're not doing the wrong thing and they are paying bonuses and they are, not capping out these grads, but bringing osteo together a little bit more because, I've kind of given up kind of being a squeaky wheel about outdated sham contracting models. And I think a lot more people are listening, but I think I also am comforted by the fact that a lot of business owners are trying to do the right thing, whereas 15 years ago, everyone was trying to sham contract.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe that is the case. I think people are educating themselves and they're trying to find a better way and a model that works, whichever that is. But there is still some toxicity and silos that comes with.
Yeah, look, volume's important, and to have, I know here in Sydney, we've, like you said, they're interviewing us. If anyone ever comes out here, they're interviewing us. I mean, we're fighting for graduates here. We'll put an ad out, and we'll be lucky to get a couple of applications, if any, and it's really hard to. I guess, evolve your model, whether it's contract or, I mean, the contractor model, I guess, you can evolve just based on who you've got already. But, moving to an employee model, it's, unless you start take on physios and chiropractors and expand that way, it's really hard to scale and very, very difficult to, I guess, to have that without the volume of osteopaths. So, I mean, you've heard me say this a few times, we're crying out for a course here in Sydney, and I think if that happens in the near future, you'll see a lot more people kind of probably knocking on your door, Jade, and saying, hey, teach us how you do this.
Well, our 3 last interns moved interstate, so there is hope.
There is hope. And I see it here with physiotherapy, and they're it's majority employment here with physiotherapy. It's probably like that in Melbourne too. It's not, but you're right. What I do see, at the moment I'm seeing the employment model here with physios heading in that direction of, I guess, giving them too much capacity and not enough remuneration. And because there's just new graduates coming through every year, they're like, well, if you're not happy, we'll just get somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
Physios are screaming out now for contractor models because it's the only way they can earn more, because they've got this, again, archaic employment model that is a 40% commission inclusive of super and no bonuses. Like, they're not going to keep them either. So, there's a lot of, there's good and bad in everything. But I think if you want to retain people, you just fall back on those top 3 things: adequate remuneration, culture, and a career pathway. If you kind of fall back on what the evidence tells us, then that's how you keep people. Yeah,
right. Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you for your time today or tonight. So thank you so much. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and we finally got there. I am going to keep you on the line with me for my Success in Practice students, just for an extra few more minutes. But for everybody else, thank you for joining us. Thank you for Jade for joining us. And hopefully somewhere down the track we can get to do round 2. And by that time, your clinic is up and running, and you can tell us about that.
Yes, and thank you to you, Sammy, for giving osteopaths a voice and for sharing your passion, and for equally trying to lift the bar in osteopathy.
It's a pleasure, especially when I get to talk to people like you, Jade. All right, Jade, thank you tonight, and everybody have a good night.